Hello, Marissa. This is Dr. Reddick. I hope you're doing well. I'm going to be reviewing your swing analysis. We're going to be looking at what we refer to as hitting inhibitors. There's 12 things I'll be looking for, and these things impact your power, your contact, as well as your efficiency. First thing we look for is what we call sway. And so we look at your negative move, which is your movement going away from the pitcher, and you have a strong negative move there. And what I do is I draw a line, this outside part here, roughly about 90 degrees, and just make sure that knee doesn't go past that line there. So great negative move. Next thing we look for is loss of posture. So we take your negative move, and what we do is we look at where your head is in alignment with your waist. And so what we would like is for, your right eye to your waist, kind of a forward lean. You have a little bit there, depending on how I mark it. Actually, you might have a little bit of a negative lean there. So we actually want you leaning forward, attacking. Let me have you go to the toe touch position. Yeah, and it does show here as well. See if I go from your eye to your waist, there's a little backwards lean. And we technically don't want that backwards lean until you get to the heel plant position. And of course, you have that backward lean at this point because you're already there. But as we go back to the negative position, we actually want that your head in front of the waist. And so you're kind of slightly back. So we would want you 87 this way, but according to this, you're about 87 going back. And I suspect a little bit of that. Like I said, you have a strong negative move. You also have rotation of those shoulders to start with. And I wonder if that's causing maybe the timing of the rotation of your shoulders is causing that loss of attacking posture. Next, what we have is we look for dead hands. And so on the negative move, what we would like to see is a separation, some length between the mid aspect of your hand and your nose, all right? And so when you go to that negative position, does that increase that line? And so we take it to the negative. And if we were to draw another line kind of between the hands and the nose, do we really see any separation? And not really. You see 1, 2, 3, 4 bars, 1, 2, 3, 4 bars. So even though it moves, you're kind of moving as a whole. But when you get the stretching of the hands, you create this elasticity that generates power. And so on this one, I would say you do have dead hands. So we're seeing a shift of the weight, maybe a little rotation of the shoulders, but not really seeing a separation of your hands from your body. You're starting out with it already separated and just shifting it to the right. But some batters will hold the bat a little bit closer to the neck, and then on that negative move going to the toe touch, you'll start to see that separation there. And again, what we're trying to do is just generate energy and releasing that energy on the swing. Next, what we're looking for, so we went through sway, loss of posture, dead hands, and now we're looking for loss of base. And on loss of base, what I do is I take it to the toe touch position, which we're going to call here. And then main thing, want that back foot flat and that knee not pointing towards the camera. So no loss of base there, good position. Next, we want to look to see if you're hanging back. And so what we do, let me change that line there. Not that it matters, but I'm going to draw a line here roughly about 9 degrees. And then we're going to have you swing all the way through contact. And what we don't want to see is that foot crossing that line there, all right? And you see that foot crossing the line. So what we're seeing is, we talked about your negative move. So we're definitely seeing a weight shift away from the pitcher. And you do step, and there seems to be a little bit of shift, but still most of the weight when you swing is on that back foot. So I almost think in this position, I would like you, that back foot, you up on your toes, and that heel on the line or on this side of the line. And that gives me a indication that your weight, all of your weight, I should say, is shifting forward. So again, there is a little shift because we saw your hips move in that direction, and then they rotate, but you still have a lot of weight on that right foot. Kind of think of it, you want to toe off when you hit. So we do have some hanging back. And I believe, based off your physical screen, I think it might be a technique issue. It looks like your hips, internal rotation moves well. There were some issues with the pelvic rotation. Which is interesting because you have a pretty good, so it showed limitation in your trunk as well as your pelvic rotation, but yet you're able to get some coil in there. So there's some compensation somewhere. And actually the compensation is partly really pushing that top left shoulder back to increase that coil, but it might be throwing off your weight shift and your sequencing, hence your foot being back there. Next thing we look for is what we call gate swing. And so basically we don't want that elbow to get stuck on your hip. So we have you come down, and let's see, 1, 2, 3. All right, so it's only on there for 2 frames. Typically if it's 3 or more, say you have a gate swing, it just kind of, the elbow gets caught in there. 1, 2, so you're cutting it close. I would say 1, 2, 3. Okay, I'm going to call it a gate swing. And so that just elbow is just getting caught on that hip a little bit, and that can impact your overall sequencing as well as contact. And what we'll do is we'll look on the rear view to see if your hands, if you're casting or losing space, and then that'll make a little bit more sense. Next thing we look at is flying elbows. I take you to the toe touch position. And so elbow is in line with the hands. I'm going to take a few screens more and good alignment with the it'll work here. All right, it's not cooperating. Good alignment with your hands and your elbow. That's what we want to see. So good elbow hand movements, meaning that you're not pushing through on the swing. We also want to make sure at toe touch you're not dumping the barrel. So at toe touch, you want those hands further away from the pitcher. And then the other thing we look for is drifting. So again, negative move, we're looking for a sway, when you go this way. Drifting, we put you at heel plant, draw a line straight up and down, maybe a little bit this way. And then we pretty much want you rotating around that line, which you do. And if anything, let me move this. Make sure you're actually not falling backwards on this. So rotation. Okay, now you're doing good. All right, so no signs of drifting. In golf, we would call this a slide. And so now I'm going to switch views. Is that you? I think that's you. Yeah, it's Marissa. All right, and so I'm going to zoom in a little bit, or a lot. And then a couple of things we look for. Have you go through the motions as you start your forward move. I'm going to draw a line down your glutes here. And what I want you to do is to stay on that line, and we don't want to see a lot of space Oh, we got a little bit there, a little bit there. And the reason that's important, when you lose that space, you narrow the area between your body and the ball, and you decrease the area for your hands to move, and that can cause you to get jammed on certain pitches. Next thing we look for is casting of the hands. So we take you to the toe touch position, boop, and then we want the lead hand inside the elbow, and you're doing pretty good, pretty good, pretty good, pretty good. All right. So your hand, you're not throwing your hands out, but you are decreasing the space in which your hands can move. And, you know, for instance, if you get an inside pitch, that could jam you there. So we said loss of space. And I apologize, I meant to close my email there. And so I'm going to switch over to the 3D analysis. And this is kind of interesting here. So one of the things we look for is the X factor, and that is the separation between your shoulders and your hips. And so this graph here is your X factor. And so on your X factor, you start out at about negative 19 degrees. It doesn't matter if it's negative 19 or plus 19. And then you get a full about 67, all right? And depending on where I mark this based off your graph, you're roughly about 50 degrees X factor, which is, you know, what we want. 25, 35 is ideal. And so you're getting a good coil, which is generating power. And so the other way to generate power is to have good sequencing. And so red represents your lead arm, the orange represents the pelvis, and then the shoulder is represented in green, or we could even say the trunk, if you like. And so ideally what we want to happen first is your pelvis fires, or I should say it peaks first. And so based off of this, you're actually leading with your pelvis, which is good. But then your arms seem to happen next, and then your shoulder. And so ideally what we want is your pelvis, and then your shoulder, and forgive me, I'll go back and forth between trunk and shoulder. Just think kind of your thoracic area. And then we want to see your arm. But what's happening is you're doing pretty good firing with the hips. And I think that likely is because of that X factor. You're coiling so much, those hips are getting out there early, but then your arms are outpacing your thorax. And so even though you're getting decent velocity, you're not getting the best transfer of power. And then also we see with you hanging back, we don't have that weight shift going forward. So some of this is related to your physical screen. We do need to work on stabilizing your pelvis movement, increasing your core strength. But some of this also may be technique, because again, you do have a great X factor, which a lot of people struggle with, that separation between the thoracic and pelvic region. But because your transfer of power is not how it should be, even though the hips are leading first. So we want orange peaking, then green, then red. But you have orange, then red peaking. So even though there is movement in the thorax, there's a loss of power within your swing. And those things with the corrective exercises and some drills can be corrected. Well, thank you so much, and we'll be working together shortly. Take care.